David Eby's debate performance mainly focused on defining and attacking his primary opponent for Premier, BC Conservative leader John Rustad. Eby's sharpest attacks concentrated on Rustad's anti-vax rhetoric, connections to money laundering that plagued the province under the BC Liberal rule, and paternalistic attitudes towards Indigenous communities and reconciliation.
Yeah, when we were all rolling up our sleeves to get vaccines to protect vulnerable seniors from COVID-19, when Bonnie Henry was working night and day to keep us safe during the pandemic, John Rustad and his candidates were providing donations to people who were protesting outside of hospitals, anti-vax convoy members. He's still an anti-vaxxer. He appeared in front of a group of people that called the so-called, you called it the so-called COVID vaccine. You said you wish you'd never been vaccinated.
That's just not true.
And then when someone said, do you think that public health professionals should be tried like Nazi war criminals? You said, well, we wouldn't do that in BC, but we would support an international effort to do that, John. It's embarrassing. I wouldn't fire Bonnie Henry. I'm trying to hire you and your family a family doctor. We've connected 250,000 people to family doctors. We've got so much more to do. But if you think that we'll be safer in our province with someone who doesn't believe that vaccines work in charge of things, again, difficult to listen to John Rustad on this critically important issue of organized crime in our province. When John was in government, gangsters brought hockey bags full of unmarked bills to BC casinos. They laundered money with impunity. They used our court system to enforce those same gambling debts. The government had no interest in taking that on. And now John Rustad has actually announced that he's not even going to enforce federal gun laws in British Columbia. He's going to direct the police, and this isn't just one time or twice, it's 3 times, including in the radio debate we participated in. He will direct the police not to enforce federal gun laws that prevent abusers from accessing guns, that prevent gangsters from buying and selling handguns and semi-automatic weapons. It's ridiculous. And now he says he's going to get tough on crime. Give me a break. John, you have to go with the gangsters. You have to take their cars and their houses and their guns and enforce the law, and that's what we're going to do. British Columbians need to know where you stand on these issues. When you go and you call them drug dens and you say, I'm going to close all the overdose prevention sites to one community, and then you go to another community and you say something, when you're talking to a guy whose life was saved 5 times, let me finish, John, this is important. When you're talking to a guy whose life was saved 5 times at an overdose prevention site, and you tell him, actually, don't worry, we're not going to close them, we're just going to change the name, that kind of disingenuous politics is exactly what we don't need in the toxic drug crisis.
What we need to see in this province is an opportunity for everybody to be able to prosper. There's no question there. That's one of the reasons why, as part of economic reconciliation, we are actually going to look at the the return of land to First Nations people. It needs to happen. This is rights and title. Right title is included. It's Section 35 of our Constitution. So we will be engaging with First Nations, but we want to make sure that what we're doing with First Nations is creating those opportunities for success. I have seen it when I have a young lady that comes to me and says, I'd like to give you a meat offering. And I say, what for? Because you put a program in place that gave me some training. I got my first job. I was living on the street as a single mom. I had my child on the street. I couldn't look after my child. Now I have a job, I'm back doing some training, I have another job, and I just want to say thank you. That is what economic reconciliation is, connecting with people, making sure they have an opportunity to build a future and look after the kids. That's what any parent would want in the province. That's what we need to deliver when we're working with First Nations in BC.
Well, I don't know if I would compare a relationship with First Nations to parent and child. I would compare it as a partnership, as a true partnership. We're working together to build a province here. And when we work together, amazing things happen. Some of the most successful projects in this province are joint projects with Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people, and it improves life in the whole community. John, I just can't disagree with you more that your first action would be to repeal a law that just recognizes the rights that we know Indigenous people have in this province. Why would you pick a fight with Indigenous people as one of your first steps? We got to work together here.
John?
Eby attacked Rustad concerning vaccines because of past comments the leader has made about regretting getting the COVID-19 vaccine and for not immediately disavowing a call by some of his far-right supporters to have a Nuremberg-type inquiry into the COVID-19 pandemic and government responses to it. The Nuremberg trials were the prosecutions of the worst Nazi leaders after the conclusion of World War II. To not immediately repudiate such an extreme comparison to managing the pandemic, and for Rustad to speak personally at an Ottawa convoy-related event, should be disqualifying for most voters in a more moderate-leaning province like British Columbia. Eby attacked Rustad for the relevant money laundering issue while he was a cabinet minister in the former BC Liberal government, which was in power for 16 years. Under the BC Liberals, casinos regularly accepted hockey bags of cash, which gang-connected players used to receive casino chips that they could later cash in and launder their money through. During their tenure, the BC Liberals disbanded the RCMP enforcement branch responsible for ensuring these abuses weren't happening after being warned of the issue, calling into question what the BC Liberal government knew about the issue and, as a book by Sam Cooper alleges, were likely willfully ignorant of the problem. After forming the government, the Column Commission was called to investigate the issue by the NDP and found that billions of dollars were laundered through the province using the Vancouver model. The model moved proceeds of crime internationally to purchase illicit drugs produced in Asia and trafficked in North America, with the proceeds used to buy luxury housing and cars as another means of money laundering, which the report cites as contributing to inflating house prices in the province. On First Nations reconciliation, Rustad said he would repeal the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which he and the legislature had unanimously approved in 2020. Now, Rustad would focus on economic reconciliation. Still, as the clip suggests, his approach would reinforce colonial and paternalistic relations between government and Indigenous peoples, setting back the limited progress governments have made on the issue in recent years. What do you think? Did Eby discredit Rustad's not-for-safe work performance and turn off enough moderate voters in British Columbia? Or is Rustad riding an ascendant wave of right-wing populism that could propel him into government? Let me know in the comments below.